Hello and welcome. My name is Kyle, and this is How You Level Up, a podcast that decodes language to help you become your best self. Today, we revisit an old episode. What is nonviolent communication? Nonviolent communication is a tool. It is a technique, and it has transformed the way I engage with others. When I read Nonviolent Communication, a book by psychologist Marshall Rosenberg in 2019, my life took a turn for the better. My understanding of the way I could communicate with others drastically changed. Unlike conventional communication, which often without our meaning to involves judgment, criticism, power struggles, nonviolent communication, which I now am going to refer to as NVC, creates a pathway to understanding and respect. Modern day communication often operates from the paradigm of right and wrong, good and bad. It's embedded in our cultural linguistics. We tend to analyze, diagnose, and evaluate others' behaviors, which frequently triggers defensiveness and conflict. NVC shifts communication from the focus on judgments and positions to the needs and feelings we all experience. The core difference is the intention, the process. Sounds good. Sounds easy. So let's dive in. NVC follows a 4-step process: observations, feelings, needs, and requests. Think of it as a formula, if you will. When A, I feel B because I need C, so would you be willing to do D? Let's kick it off with observations. Start by stating what you observe without mixing in the evaluation or interpretation of what's happening. This means describing actions and situations like a video camera would record them. Instead of saying, "You always interrupt me," which is an evaluation, try saying, "In our last 3 conversations, I noticed you began speaking while I was mid-sentence." That's an observation. Instead of saying, "You're so messy," you could say, "I see clothes on the bedroom floor and dishes in the living room." So that's making an observation. Then comes your feelings. Express how you genuinely feel about what you observed, the observation. Focus on the actual emotion rather than thoughts disguised as feelings. Genuine feelings are feeling frustrated, excited, worried, grateful, disappointed, hopeful. Thoughts disguised as feelings is, "I feel like you don't care. I feel like you're wrong." Then you can state your needs. You share your underlying need or value that's driving your feeling. Needs are universal. Things like autonomy, connection. These are things we all share as needs. I covered the basic needs that we share in the episode What is Fear? And it's worth repeating them here. We all have a need for autonomy, a need for celebration, for integrity, a need for play, for spiritual communion, and a need for physical well-being. In an example, I feel overwhelmed because I need our shared space to feel peaceful and organized. Then, after you've got your need out there, you make a request. Make a clear, specific request that could help meet your need. Requests are different from demands. You're genuinely open to hearing no when you make a request. And potentially, you might have to find an alternative solution. So a vague request would be, "Can you be more considerate?" A specific request would be, "Would you be willing to put your dishes in the dishwasher within an hour after using them?" You get it. At least, you get it because the description of this tool is simple to understand. So what does NVC look like in action? I'm glad you asked. Let's take a look at a workplace scene. The situation is that your colleague frequently arrives late to meetings you're leading. A traditional approach might be, "Hey, you're late all the time and it's a little bit disrespectful and unprofessional." Okay. Well, the NVC approach is, "I noticed you arrived about 15 minutes after our scheduled start time for the last 3 meetings. I feel frustrated because I need to use our time together efficiently and ensure everyone gets the information that they need. Would you be willing to either arrive by the scheduled time or let me know in advance if you're going to be delayed so we can adjust accordingly? Yeah, the NVC tool is easy to understand, and then expressing yourself like this, that's going to be a little hard. Why? Because you're vulnerable when you communicate through NVC. And let me clarify, you're not vulnerable to be hurt physically. You're vulnerable because you're truly expressing yourself. And whomever you have expressed yourself to, they have that option to decline the request. This might mean that they are mean individuals, or maybe they have a boundary that they have set. What's another potential outcome here? Well, specifically referring to this scene, maybe your colleague starts to recognize that their tardiness does not go unnoticed. Maybe they shape up. You'll never know, unless you express yourself in a way that does not put them, the recipient of your message, on the defense. And you make a request. So let's look at a relationship conflict next. The situation is that your partner spends most evenings on their phone. I'm sure this happens to a lot of us. A traditional approach would be, you're addicted to your phone, or you never pay attention to me anymore. The NVC approach would be, I notice that during our evening time together, you're often looking at your phone. I feel lonely because I want and think I need connection and quality time with you during this part of the day. Would you be willing to have a phone-free time together for an hour after dinner? Or is there another way that we could create more present time together? It might sound maybe a little gentle to express your feelings like this, yet it is extremely direct. NVC hits a home run every time it steps up to bat. Not because it's the perfect tool, it's because it's clear. So the workplace example and a relationship conflict situation, these are negative experiences. What about a positive experience? You can express gratitude, for example, with NVC. NVC transforms the way that you express your appreciation because you're connecting specifically with something that happened. Traditionally, you might say when expressing gratitude, thanks for helping, or I really appreciate you stepping in. NVC, gratitude, will sound like, thank you for washing the dishes tonight. I feel relieved and grateful because it helps me meet my need for partnership and sharing household responsibilities. Or what about if you say to a coworker or a colleague, good job on the presentation? Well, expressing yourself with NVC might sound like, when I heard you present those research findings so clearly, I felt proud and excited because I value thoroughness and clarity in our team's work. If this sounds too formal to you, you are missing the point. It's about a mindset, not the exact words we're using. You're focusing on separating your observations from subconscious judgments, and you're connecting with underlying needs, your needs. The language becomes more natural with practice. If you're worried about expressing yourself with NVC because it will lead to a request being declined, that's okay. It doesn't mean that any door has closed. You can think with this person that you've expressed a need and made a request to about alternative outcomes. In the episode where we broke down negotiation, you might remember that communication, all communication, is a dance. You can take the opportunity to find common ground. You can focus on interests instead of positions. And remember that NVC is not about getting your way. It's about expressing yourself truly and connecting. The biggest hurdle you might face with NVC, well, it could be identifying your feelings or identifying what you want as a need. This is the part that requires self-awareness. You have to step into your body and take stock. Maybe you notice at first what you don't want, and then you can explore what you do want. So to practice NVC, maybe you start by using it to listen to someone else. When someone criticizes or complains, listen for the underlying need. If someone says, they never listen, you might say, well, it sounds like You're needing to feel heard and understood, is that right? The key to practicing NVC is to start small, daily integration, and notice patterns. When you start small, start with low-stakes situations, like thanking a barista or making a simple request of friends. Maybe the daily integration is that you try to reframe one judgment each day into an observation, plus your feeling, plus a need. Maybe you don't speak up at first. You just reframe that judgment to what you want. And noticing patterns is, pay attention. Try to understand your recurring conflicts. What needs typically aren't being met there? When you begin to use NVC in your daily interactions, I'd bet anything you'll begin to notice profound shifts. People respond with less defensiveness. They are more open. Conflicts become opportunities for you for understanding rather than battles to be won. Your relationships will be more authentic as you learn to express yourself more honestly while maintaining respect and empathy for others. The goal isn't perfection, it's improvement. When we learn to see and express the humanity in ourselves, we see it in others. We contribute to a more compassionate world. So, what is one opportunity, one relationship, one situation where clearer communication could make a difference? How might you try to apply NVC to create more understanding and connection? Thank you for listening to How You Level Up. If you're enjoying the show, subscribe and give a 5-star rating. There are new episodes each month asking questions about timeless communication lessons. Language is a medium for sharing, and the knowledge unpacked here can be applied to anyone, anywhere, facing any challenge. If there's a question or topic you'd like me to dive into next, send a note to any of my connected social media accounts. This is all about how you level up.